Hello everyone, my name is Valeria Martino and I'm a PhD student at Fino Consortium at the University of Genoa in Italy, and I'm a member of LabOnt, the Center for Ontology in Turin, in Italy as well. My talk of today is entitled I Am One of You, Transgenerational Actions and Subjects. I wrote a paper about this topic, which is going to be published by Rivista di Estetica, an Italian journal of philosophy, and I'm going to try to sketch the main arguments and the general topic of my paper. First of all, I would like to briefly introduce the general topic and the field in which I'm going to say something more, I hope. First of all, we all know that there are particular kinds of actions which, due to their complexity, by their very nature, require more than one individual to be carried out, and therefore they are immediately identified by everyone, we could say, as social. So on the one hand, we have individual actions carried out by single individuals, and on the other hand, we have social actions carried out by more than one individual. Inside this very broad set of action that are social actions, we have a specific field, that of joint, or we can say collective actions, which require something more in order to be understood. Moreover, they can be very different one from the other. For example, they can have a very different level of complexity, and therefore they can require very different types of interactions, so that they can be configured as a very different one from the other. For example, they can involve two individuals or many thousands. They can require common knowledge, common hand, so sharing ends and ideas, for example, beliefs, or they can take place without any plan, without any premeditation. They can be realized in a few minutes, or taking a lifetime. So joint and collective actions is a very broad field, but I would like to focus on a particular and smaller, we can say, smaller set of actions, which are of course collective and joint, but which require specific features in order to be understood. As the title says, I'm talking about transgenerational actions. The aim of my talk is trying, at least briefly, to answer to the question, who is the subject of a transgenerational action, which in my mind, according to me, or according to the way in which I'm trying to talk about this topic, is trying to answer to the question, which theory of social groups is the most suitable to explain their behavior, I mean the behavior of the subject of a transgenerational action, when the action that the group carries out is not only complex and therefore formed by the sum of several individual, we can say, actions, but in order to be carried out, it needs a time span long enough to involve different generations. I would like to add immediately more detailed notion, as I do not intend to address the paradoxes classically connected to the notion of future generation. I'm not going to talk about the metaphysics of future generations as dealing with the non-identity problem, as Parfit or Bonin did, or the non-reciprocity problem, but rather to carry out an wide or opt in-depth analysis of the subject of a long-term actions and its features. So in order to trying to get the aim I'm going to focus on. First, I will try to give a broad and general, not new, of course, definition of joint action, which could include that of transgenerational action. So a definition which is suitable also for transgenerational actions. And second, giving a definition of their subject. So a definition of the one or those who bring these actions to conclusion. So first, I will say something about joint actions in general, trying then to say what a transgenerational action is. Then I will say what the subject of a transgenerational action is, and then try to answer to the question I said before. So first of all, as I was trying to say, an action in general can be individual or social, and it is defined as collective or joint when it involves more than one individual as subject, of course, and more specifically when it requires each of them to play their role. This is a very important feature for transgenerational actions as well. There are, of course, many examples in the literature, as playing a symphony, playing a football game, or taking a sofa or a piano upstairs and downstairs, and so on and so forth. Another very important features of collective actions, having, of course, in mind transgenerational actions, is their being lasting or not. So action, they can be carried out in a long time perspective or not, and this is, of course, very important in order to understand what a transgenerational action is. Moreover, very important is the distinction between hierarchical and egalitarian actions, which has as a consequence a difference in the conception of groups, because we know that there are symmetrical and asymmetrical groups, and concerning their action, hierarchical and egalitarian actions, as I said. Indeed, on the one hand, there are joint actions in which the role of one or more individuals is greater than that of the others, and which, therefore, these individuals can feel personally more involved and ready to act than the others. On the other hand, there are actions in which the contribution of each is comparable to that of the others. So we have actions in which someone has more agentive power than others, and actions in which this does not occur. And this is also very important in order to understand transgenerational actions. So, trying to say what a transgenerational action is, we can say that these kind of actions are complex actions, insofar they require more than one person to be carried out, and each of them has a different role, because we have very different people or and very different groups of people involved in the small groups and as part of a bigger group of subject of the action, and they are long-form actions because they have several generations at least to a subject, and they are asymmetrical actions because some of their subjects have more agentive power than others. Indeed, of course, future generations could not influence the course of events such as the present ones. Examples of transgenerational actions are the actions related to the ecological struggle or to the welfare state. So the problems of public debt and so on and so forth. So we can ask, who is the subject of these kinds of action? Who is the subject of a transgenerational action? The first and most obvious answer is more people belonging to different generations, but of course this is not enough. This is a trivial or a naive answer. So we can have something, for example, we can have that they are numerous individuals whose individual or singular actions are interconnected, having as a result interpersonal actions, and therefore they're linked together by a common goal. Furthermore, the individual subjects involved are constantly changing. if only through the natural process of birth and death. So having these features in mind, we can try to focus on the main topic of the talk. So having in mind the features of subjects and actions, I'm trying to sketch. We can ask which theory is suitable for understanding better this topic. We can start saying what is not suitable for us, at least according to me. And I would like to say that we cannot understand the subject of a transgenerational action as a mathematical set. I would be very short in doing this. I'm not going to explain it in details, but I would like to say that I agree with those who think that thinking about the neurological sum of people in order to understand what a group is not the better way to understand groups in general and transgenerational subjects more specifically. At the same time, I think that we cannot use a paradigm based on short-term daily actions, such as taking a walk together. As for Gilbert, of course, I know very well that Gilbert herself deals with more general and long-term actions, talking about political actions, and so trying to understand the political field and actions done in inside nations, states, so bigger groups, so we can say, using a theory of the plural subject, but I think that, and also in this case, I would be very brief. Maybe what I'm going to say is not sufficient in order to understand my opinion and my argument, but as I was trying to say, I think that this kind of theory is not the best in order to understand transgenerational actions and subjects. And so what? I would like to say that the first thing to do is to focus on common goals, which is not something to criticize Gilbert. Gilbert herself deals with sharing goals, values, and ends, but I want to add that focus on common goals is the first step in order to understand transgenerational actions and subjects, because it is precisely the purpose of the group and the way in which this purpose is shared among its members that makes it specific and allows, for example, to distinguish the members of a crowd, such as a procession in the square, from who is in that same square, but for completely random reasons, by chance. So I would like to share a teleological account of groups in that, if it means as I've just said, but of course it is important to ask what does it mean to have a shared purpose or a common goal, because as I was saying, there are very different theory of sharing ends and having common goals as well. So I think that a very important thing in order to understand sharing ends and having common goals is focusing on the sense of us. We need a sense of us capable of being turned into a sense of commitment, and only using these notions, these topics, so we can understand what is to have a transgenerational subject and action. As a consequence, we can say that to have a common purpose, it does not mean that disparate and unconnected individuals have the same purpose by chance, means that individuals develop a sense of belonging to a community. However, indefinitely, this may be represented by them in their minds, which allows them to develop a sense of us, without which it would not even be possible to understand the sharing events. The sense of us, however, must be transformed into a sense of commitment, and a further step is necessary. Then, using these notions, that of sense of belonging, sense of us, sense of commitment, is trying also to use a phenomenological approach together with an ontological one. With a phenomenological approach, I mean something very broad, not as an historical philosophical movement, but as I said, as an approach, as a point of view, which can use a psychological, not only from an individual, but also from a social perspective, in order to understand something that from the only ontological perspective we maybe couldn't grasp. So a second consequence of what I was saying is that, as I said, unlike a classic ontological approach, one which is integrated with phenomenology, broadly understood, makes it possible to detect these links, these connections between different senses we feel as part of a bigger community, and it allows us to use them to explain this possibility, the fact that we feel commitment to an agreement to which we have never been subjected, at least explicitly. This is a very common and important topic of political theory and political philosophy, which is important too in order to understand transgenerational actions, because this kind of action, as I said, refer to an agreement that a pact that we never decide to join as individual, because, as I said, it implies the presence of someone who is yet to come, future generations indeed. So my time is over. I know that and I guess that there are many open questions which I not answered to, but I hope to have said something interesting, not too boring, and something that can be discussed. Here are some of my references, of the references I used in order to give this talk and to write the paper. Thank you.